chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core. Will validate every moment you stood firm when others laughed. Will confirm every time you held your ground when they mocked you, because right now, in this very moment, the same people who ridiculed your faith, who made jokes about your prayers, who laughed at your devotion, who dismissed your spiritual practices as superstition, who called your belief system primitive, who mocked your trust in the divine as weakness, are discovering something so terrifying, so absolutely devastating, so undeniably real that their laughter has turned to silence. Their mockery has transformed into fear. Their ridicule has become regret. They mocked your faith, not just once, not just casually, not just in passing. They systematically, deliberately, consistently attacked your spiritual foundation. They questioned your intelligence for believing. They challenged your sanity for having faith. They ridiculed your devotion as if trusting in something greater than yourself was evidence of weakness rather than strength, proof of foolishness rather than wisdom, sign of delusion rather than connection to truth beyond human comprehension. They laughed when you prayed. They rolled their eyes when you spoke about divine intervention. They made jokes when you mentioned spiritual protection. They dismissed your faith as coping mechanism, as psychological crutch, as intellectual failure. They acted superior in their skepticism, enlightened in their doubt, advanced in their rejection of what you held sacred. They treated your faith as something to be outgrown, evolved past, left behind like childhood beliefs that mature minds abandon. But something is happening now that they cannot explain, cannot rationalize, cannot dismiss. Something so specific, so targeted, so precisely aligned with what you said would happen that even their skepticism cannot protect them from recognizing it. They are facing divine judgment, not in some distant future, not in some abstract afterlife, but right now, right here, in ways so undeniable, so visible, so absolutely impossible to ignore, that their mockery of your faith has become the most foolish thing they ever did. Tonight, you're going to understand exactly what divine judgment looks like when it manifests in real time, when it executes with precision, when it arrives with the kind of perfect timing that makes even skeptics question their skepticism. You're going to see why mocking someone's faith isn't just disrespectful, it's dangerous. You're going to witness what happens when people who dismiss divine authority discover that authority is more real than they ever imagined, more powerful than they ever acknowledged, more present than they ever admitted. Your faith wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Your prayers weren't delusion, they were communication. Your trust in divine protection wasn't naivety, it was knowledge of how the universe actually operates, how spiritual laws actually function, how cosmic justice actually works. And now that they're experiencing the consequences of mocking what they didn't understand, dismissing what they couldn't perceive, ridiculing what they refused to acknowledge, they're learning the hardest lesson of their lives. Let me take you back to when they first started mocking you, when they first began their campaign of ridicule against your faith. You were open about your beliefs. You spoke freely about your spiritual practices. You shared honestly about your relationship with the divine. You weren't trying to convert them, weren't forcing your faith on them, weren't demanding they believe what you believed. You were simply living your truth, expressing your connection, honoring your relationship with forces greater than yourself. But they couldn't let you exist peacefully in your faith. Your belief challenged their skepticism. Your prayers confronted their atheism. Your trust in divine order threatened their worldview built on materialism and cynicism. So they attacked, they mocked, they ridiculed. They made you the subject of their jokes, the target of their contempt, the example of everything they believed they had evolved beyond. Some of them were subtle about it. They couched their mockery in concern. They suggested you seek therapy instead of prayer. They recommended medication instead of meditation. They framed their dismissal of your faith as caring about your mental health. as worrying about your rational thinking, as loving you enough to want you to abandon your delusions. But underneath the false concern was pure mockery, complete dismissal, total rejection of everything you held sacred. Others were blatant. They laughed openly at your faith. They made jokes about your prayers. They mocked your spiritual practices in front of others. They told stories about your beliefs as if they were the height of foolishness, the pinnacle of naivety, the ultimate example of unsophisticated thinking. They gathered audiences for their mockery, recruited others to join their ridicule, created entire social dynamics where mocking your faith became entertainment, where dismissing your beliefs became bonding activity, where ridiculing your devotion became proof of their own intellectual superiority. Both hurt. The subtle mockery disguised as concern and the blatant ridicule performed as entertainment. Both attacked the core of who you are. Both dismissed what mattered most to you. Both treated your sacred relationship with the divine as something worthy of contempt rather than respect. And in those moments, in those attacks, in that sustained campaign of mockery, you had choices to make. You could have abandoned your faith to make them comfortable. You could have hidden your beliefs to avoid their ridicule. You could have pretended skepticism to fit into their worldview. Many people do exactly that. They sacrifice their spiritual truth on the altar of social acceptance. They abandon their divine connection to avoid human mockery. They let go of their faith to gain approval from those who mock faith. But you didn't. You held firm. You maintained your practices. You continued your prayers. You kept your faith even when they laughed, even when they mocked, even when they ridiculed. You knew something they didn't know. You understood something they couldn't comprehend. You recognized something they refused to acknowledge, that your faith wasn't about them, wasn't dependent on their approval, wasn't validated or invalidated by their belief or disbelief. Your faith was between you and the divine. Your prayers were communication with forces that don't require human permission to exist. Your spiritual practices connected you to dimensions that remain real whether skeptics acknowledge them or not. You understood that their mockery of your faith said more about their limitations than your delusions, revealed more about their blindness than your foolishness, demonstrated more about their inability to perceive than your inability to reason. So you weathered their mockery. You endured their ridicule. You survived their sustained campaign of dismissal. And something happened in that endurance, in that persistence, in that refusal to abandon your faith despite social pressure to do so. Your faith deepened. Your connection strengthened. Your relationship with the divine intensified. Their mockery intended to shake your faith actually solidified it. Their ridicule designed to make you doubt actually made you more certain. Their attacks, meant to destroy your spiritual foundation, actually reinforced it. Because faith under fire is faith that gets forged into something unbreakable. Belief that survives mockery becomes belief that cannot be shaken. Trust in the divine that persists through sustained ridicule becomes trust that nothing can diminish. You emerged from their mockery stronger in your faith than you were before they attacked it, more certain in your beliefs than you were before they challenged them, more connected to the divine than you were before they tried to sever that connection. And then something started happening. Small things at first, barely noticeable shifts that only you perceived because you were paying attention, because you understood spiritual patterns, because you recognized divine intervention. The people who mocked you started experiencing difficulties. Problems emerged in their lives that seemed random to others but looked like consequences to you. Challenges manifested that appeared coincidental to casual observers but felt like judgment to anyone who understood spiritual law. You didn't celebrate their struggles. You didn't rejoice in their difficulties. You didn't gloat over their problems. Because your faith taught you compassion. Your spiritual practice cultivated empathy. Your connection to the divine generated love even for those who mocked you. You felt sad watching them experience consequences they could have avoided if they had respected what they didn't understand instead of mocking what they couldn't perceive. But you also recognized what was happening. You understood the patterns. You saw divine judgment beginning to manifest. Not because God is petty or vengeful, not because the universe is cruel or vindictive, but because spiritual laws are real, because cosmic principles function whether people believe in them or not, because divine authority exists independent of human acknowledgement. They mocked your faith. And that mockery violated laws they didn't know existed, offended forces they didn't believe were real, challenged authority they didn't think was present. Now the consequences of that violation are manifesting. Now the results of that offense are arriving. Now the response to that challenge is executing. And it's not subtle, it's not vague, it's not ambiguous. Divine judgment is manifesting in ways so specific, so targeted, so precisely aligned with their mockery that even they are beginning to question whether maybe, just maybe, what they dismissed as superstition is actually truth. What they ridiculed as delusion is actually reality. What they mocked as weakness is actually connection to power beyond their comprehension. Let me tell you what's happening to them right now, because understanding the specifics of divine judgment will help you recognize it's not coincidence, not random misfortune, not just bad luck. First, their words are coming back to haunt them. The specific things they said in mockery of your faith are manifesting as specific realities in their own lives. If they mocked your prayers for protection, they're now experiencing situations where they desperately need protection and have nowhere to turn. If they ridiculed your faith in divine provision, they're now facing lack and scarcity that no human effort seems able to resolve. If they laughed at your belief in spiritual warfare, they're now experiencing attacks they cannot explain, cannot defend against, cannot overcome through material means. Every mocking word they spoke is becoming a prophecy of their own experience, a prediction of their own reality, a description of their own suffering. They spoke against your faith carelessly, thoughtlessly, cruelly. Now those words are circling back like boomerangs, returning with force, manifesting as lived experience that mirrors exactly what they mocked. This isn't coincidence. This is divine judgment using their own words against them, their own mockery as instruction for their correction, their own ridicule as blueprint for their consequences. They mocked prayer. Now they're in situations where only prayer could help, but they don't know how to pray. They ridiculed faith. Now they're facing circumstances where only faith could sustain, but they have no faith to draw from. They dismissed divine intervention. Now they need intervention but have no connection to the divine to invoke it. Second, their certainty is crumbling. They were so sure, so confident, so absolutely convinced that your faith was foolishness, your beliefs were delusion, your spiritual practices were primitive. They built their entire identity on being too sophisticated for faith, too intelligent for belief, too evolved for spiritual practice. They wore their skepticism like badge of honor, their atheism like mark of enlightenment, their rejection of the divine like proof of advanced consciousness. But now their certainty is encountering experiences that skepticism cannot explain, situations that materialism cannot account for, realities that their worldview has no framework to address. They're experiencing things that should not happen according to their understanding of how the world works, facing circumstances that should not exist according to their model of reality, encountering forces that should not be real according to their philosophy of life. And this collision between their certainty and their experience is destroying them from the inside out. Cognitive dissonance is tearing them apart. They cannot maintain their skepticism in the face of evidence that contradicts it. They cannot preserve their atheism when experiencing what feels like divine intervention against them. They cannot hold their materialism when encountering spiritual consequences that have no material explanation. Their worldview is shattering. Their certainty is dissolving. Their confidence is evaporating. Third, their protection is gone. They didn't know they needed protection. They didn't understand that faith provides covering, that spiritual practice generates shielding. That connection to the divine creates defense against forces operating in dimensions beyond material perception. They thought they were safe in their skepticism, protected by their rationality, defended by their intelligence. But skepticism provides no protection against spiritual attack. Rationality creates no shield against divine judgment. Intelligence generates no defense against cosmic correction. You were protected by your faith. Your prayers created covering. Your spiritual practices generated shielding. Your connection to the divine provided defense. They mocked that protection, they ridiculed that covering, they dismissed that shielding. And in their mockery, in their ridicule, in their dismissal, they inadvertently removed whatever passive protection they might have had. They declared themselves outside divine grace by mocking it. They positioned themselves beyond spiritual covering by ridiculing it. They placed themselves outside cosmic protection by dismissing it. Now they're experiencing what it feels like to face life without protection, to encounter challenges without shielding, to deal with spiritual forces without covering. And it terrifies them. They feel exposed, vulnerable, naked before forces they don't understand, powers they can't perceive, entities they don't believe in. But that believe in them, that see them, that target them, precisely because they positioned themselves outside protection through their mockery of faith. Fourth, their problems are multiplying. It started with one issue, one challenge, one difficulty. But problems are multiplying like cells dividing. Challenges are compounding like interest accruing. Difficulties are escalating like fires spreading. What began as manageable is becoming overwhelming. What started as inconvenient is becoming catastrophic. What seemed like bad luck is revealing itself as systematic divine correction. Financial problems are cascading. Relationship difficulties are amplifying. Health issues are emerging. Professional challenges are mounting. Every area of life where they felt secure is becoming unstable. Every aspect of existence where they felt confident is becoming uncertain. Every dimension of life where they felt in control is becoming chaotic, and they cannot understand why. They cannot identify the source. They cannot determine the cause, because the cause is spiritual and they don't believe in spiritual causation. The source is divine judgment and they don't acknowledge divine authority. The explanation is cosmic correction and they don't accept cosmic law. So they scramble for material explanations. They search for rational reasons. They desperately try to identify logical causes for what's happening to them. But their efforts fail because they're looking in the wrong dimension, seeking answers in the wrong realm, searching for causes in the wrong plane of existence. The problem isn't material, the challenge isn't rational, the difficulty isn't logical, it's spiritual, it's divine, it's cosmic. And until they acknowledge that, until they recognize that, until they accept that, their problems will continue multiplying, their challenges will keep compounding, their difficulties will persist escalating. Fifth, their pride is being crushed. They were so proud of their skepticism, so arrogant in their atheism, so smug in their rejection of faith. They looked down on you for believing. They felt superior to you for doubting. They considered themselves more evolved than you for dismissing the divine. Their pride and their skepticism was core to their identity. Their arrogance and their atheism was fundamental to their self-image. Their smugness and their rejection was essential to their sense of self. But pride comes before destruction. Arrogance precedes humbling. Smugness invites correction. And they are experiencing the crushing of their pride in ways so systematic, so thorough, so absolutely devastating, that the person they were before divine judgment arrived is being completely dismantled. Every source of pride is being attacked. Every foundation of arrogance is being shaken. Every pillar of smugness is being demolished. They thought they were too intelligent for faith. Now they're discovering intelligence without wisdom is foolishness. They believed they were too sophisticated for belief. Now they're learning sophistication without spiritual understanding is primitive. They assumed they were too evolved for divine connection. Now they're experiencing that evolution without spiritual development is regression. Their pride is being systematically destroyed. Their arrogance is being methodically crushed. Their smugness is being thoroughly eliminated. Now let's talk about specific manifestations of divine judgment in different areas of their lives, because recognizing these patterns will help you understand this isn't random, isn't coincidental, isn't just bad luck. In their relationships, judgment is manifesting as isolation. The same people they gathered to mock your faith are now distancing themselves. Friendships are dissolving. Partnerships are crumbling. Family members are creating space. They're experiencing the loneliness they tried to create for you by mocking your faith, the isolation they attempted to generate by ridiculing your beliefs, the separation they worked to manifest by dismissing your spiritual practices. This relational judgment is precise. People are leaving them for the same reasons they mocked you. If they ridiculed your faith as irrational, people are now leaving them calling them irrational. If they mocked your prayers as weakness, people are now abandoning them calling them weak. If they dismissed your spiritual practices as crazy, people are now distancing themselves calling them crazy. The exact judgments they pronounced on your faith are now being pronounced on their character by those leaving them. In their careers, judgment is manifesting as sudden obstacles. Opportunities they were certain about are disappearing. Promotions they were promised are evaporating. Projects they were leading are failing. Success they took for granted is becoming elusive. They're experiencing professional challenges that have no clear cause, career difficulties that make no logical sense, work problems that seem to come from nowhere, and the timing is suspicious. These professional problems intensified after they mocked your faith. These career difficulties multiplied after they ridiculed your beliefs. These work challenges escalated after they dismissed your spiritual practices. Divine judgment often manifests in the realm people value most, targets the area people take most pride in, attacks the dimension people feel most confident about. Many who mocked your faith took great pride in their professional success, built their identity on their career achievements, defined themselves by their work accomplishments. So divine judgment is targeting exactly that, attacking precisely there, manifesting specifically in the realm they valued most, hoped would prove their superiority, expected would validate their skepticism over your faith. In their finances, judgment is manifesting as unexpected loss. Money they counted on is disappearing. Income they depended on is drying up. Savings they built are depleting. Investments they made are failing. They're experiencing financial stress that makes no sense given their circumstances. Economic pressure that has no clear cause. Money problems that seem to emerge from nowhere. Bills multiply. Debt accumulates. Resources drain. And no amount of work, no degree of effort, no level of intelligence resolves it. This financial judgment is teaching them what you knew through faith, that provision comes from sources beyond human control, that abundance flows from dimensions beyond material manipulation, that prosperity depends on forces beyond earthly effort. They mocked your faith in divine provision. Now they're discovering that without connection to those divine sources, without relationship with those spiritual dimensions, without alignment with those cosmic forces, all their human effort produces insufficient results. All their material work generates inadequate outcomes. All their earthly striving creates unsustainable prosperity. In their health, judgment is manifesting as mysterious symptoms. Issues emerge that doctors cannot diagnose, problems develop that medicine cannot resolve, conditions manifest that have no clear medical cause. They're experiencing the physical consequences of spiritual violation, the bodily manifestation of cosmic correction, the material expression of divine judgment. Because body and spirit are connected, physical and spiritual are linked, material and cosmic are intertwined. They mocked your faith that spiritual health affects physical well-being, ridiculed your belief that prayer influences bodily healing, dismissed your practice of seeking divine intervention for health issues. Now they're discovering their bodies are responding to spiritual conditions they don't acknowledge, manifesting consequences of cosmic laws they don't believe in, expressing results of divine judgment they don't accept. And medical science, for all its sophistication, cannot address spiritual causes, cannot resolve cosmic consequences, cannot heal divine judgment manifesting in physical form. In their peace, judgment is manifesting as constant anxiety. They cannot rest, they cannot relax, they cannot find calm. There's perpetual unease, continuous worry, ongoing fear. They wake up at night with inexplicable dread. They move through days with persistent tension. They face each moment with underlying panic. This anxiety has no clear psychological cause, no obvious emotional trigger, no identifiable mental source. It's spiritual. It's the manifestation of divine judgment at the level of consciousness, the expression of cosmic correction in the realm of mind, the result of being outside protection they mocked. You had peace through faith. You experienced calm through prayer. You found rest through spiritual practice. They mocked that peace as delusion, ridiculed that calm as ignorance, dismissed that rest as avoidance. Now they're discovering that without faith there is no lasting peace, without prayer there is no sustainable calm, without spiritual practice there is no authentic rest. All their material comforts cannot generate peace. All their earthly securities cannot create calm. All their human efforts cannot produce rest. Because peace comes from spiritual sources they rejected. Calm flows from divine connections they mocked. Rest emerges from cosmic alignment they dismissed. Let me tell you what's happening in their minds right now, because understanding their internal experience will help you process this moment with wisdom and compassion. They're confused. Deeply, profoundly confused. Their worldview is being challenged by their experience. Their beliefs about reality are being contradicted by their circumstances. Their certainty about how the world works is being undermined by what's happening to them. This confusion is destabilizing them, disorienting them, destroying their sense of understanding reality. They thought they had life figured out. They believed they understood how things work. They assumed their materialist, skeptical worldview was an accurate map of reality. But their map is being proven wrong by their territory. Their theory is being contradicted by their experience. Their understanding is being invalidated by their circumstances. And this invalidation is devastating because their entire identity was built on being right about reality, being correct about how things work, being accurate in their understanding of life. They're scared, real, gripping, undeniable fear. Not fear of material threats they can identify and address, fear of spiritual forces they don't understand, divine judgment they cannot escape, cosmic correction they don't know how to stop. This fear is deeper than ordinary anxiety, more profound than normal worry, more intense than typical stress. It's existential fear, spiritual terror, cosmic dread. They're feeling the weight of having violated laws they didn't believe in, offended authority they didn't acknowledge, challenged power they didn't think was real. This fear manifests as paranoia. They're looking over their shoulders for threats they cannot name. They're jumping at shadows they cannot identify. They're feeling pursued by forces they cannot perceive. But it's not paranoia in the clinical sense. It's spiritual awareness breaking through material consciousness, cosmic reality penetrating earthly awareness, divine truth invading skeptical minds. They're beginning to sense what you always knew, that there are forces beyond material perception, powers beyond human control, authorities beyond earthly government. They're questioning everything, every belief they held, every certainty they maintained, every assumption they made. If they were wrong about your faith being foolish, what else are they wrong about? If your prayers were actually effective when they thought they were useless, what else do they misunderstand? If spiritual forces are real when they believed they were fiction, what else exists that they've dismissed? This questioning is necessary for their potential transformation, required for their possible awakening, essential for their eventual understanding. But it's also torturous for them. Their entire framework for understanding reality is crumbling. Their complete model for navigating life is failing. Their total system for making sense of existence is collapsing. They're experiencing philosophical death, intellectual destruction, ideological devastation. Everything they built their identity on is being systematically dismantled. Everything they based their confidence on is being thoroughly challenged. Everything they used to feel superior about is being completely invalidated. They're isolated. Even people who share their skepticism are avoiding them now. Even those who joined their mockery are distancing themselves. Even friends who agreed with their ridicule are creating space. Because divine judgment is contagious in a sense, people instinctively avoid those experiencing it, unconsciously distance themselves from those facing it, intuitively create space from those undergoing it, not out of cruelty but out of self-preservation, not from meanness but from survival instinct. Not from hardness, but from wisdom that recognizes being close to someone under divine judgment might bring similar consequences. So they're alone, facing divine judgment isolated, experiencing cosmic correction without support, enduring spiritual consequences without community. This loneliness amplifies everything else they're experiencing, intensifies every challenge they're facing, magnifies every difficulty they're enduring. They're learning what you knew through faith, that spiritual isolation is the worst kind of loneliness, that being disconnected from the divine is the deepest form of alone, that existing outside cosmic community is the most profound separation. Now let me tell you what this means for you, because understanding how to navigate this moment is crucial for your own spiritual development, essential for your continued growth, necessary for your ongoing evolution. First, resist the temptation to gloat. I know they mocked you. I know they deserve what they're experiencing. I know you want to say, I told you so. But gloating diminishes you, not them. It reduces your spiritual stature, lowers your consciousness frequency, degrades your divine connection. Your faith teaches compassion. Your spiritual practice cultivates mercy. Your divine connection generates love even for enemies, grace even for mockers, kindness even for those who ridiculed you. Gloating contradicts all of that, violates the essence of your faith, betrays the core of your beliefs. So resist it. Let divine judgment speak for itself. Let cosmic correction make its own point. Let spiritual consequences deliver their own lesson without your commentary, without your celebration, without your "I told you so." Second, offer prayers if your spirit leads you. Pray for their awakening, not their destruction. Pray for their understanding, not their continued suffering. Pray for their potential transformation, not their permanent judgment. Your faith gives you access to divine intervention. Your prayers can invoke mercy. Your spiritual practice can generate grace. Not because they deserve it, but because that's who you are, what your faith teaches, how your connection to the divine expresses itself. This doesn't mean their judgment will stop immediately. Divine correction must run its course, cosmic consequences must execute fully, spiritual lessons must be learned completely. But your prayers can soften what they're experiencing, can create space for their awakening within their judgment, can open doors for their transformation through their consequences. You have power they don't have. Use it as your faith teaches, as your spiritual practice guides, as your divine connection directs. Third, maintain your boundaries. Some of them will come to you now. Suddenly believing, suddenly respectful, suddenly interested in your faith. Be discerning about who deserves access to your spiritual wisdom, who has earned the right to receive your insight, who is genuinely seeking truth versus who is simply scared. Not everyone who comes to you now is ready for what you carry. Not everyone who asks for help now actually wants transformation. Not everyone who seeks your guidance now truly desires spiritual growth. Some just want you to fix their problems without them having to change. Some just want your prayers to stop their judgment without them having to acknowledge their offense. Some just want your spiritual help without them having to develop their own faith. These people will drain you without growing, will use you without transforming, will take from you without evolving. Protect your spiritual energy from them. Your faith is too valuable to waste on those who want results without relationship, outcomes without transformation, miracles without commitment. Fourth, use this as teaching opportunity for those who will learn. There are people watching what's happening to those who mocked your faith. People who aren't experiencing divine judgment themselves but are witnessing it in others. People who are questioning their own skepticism, reconsidering their own atheism, reevaluating their own dismissal of the divine. These people are ready for truth, open to teaching, receptive to wisdom. Share with them, teach them, guide them. Tell them about faith not to prove you are right, but to help them connect to divine protection, to establish their own spiritual covering, to develop their own cosmic alignment. Tell them about prayer not to shame those experiencing judgment, but to help them access divine intervention. To teach them communication with forces greater than themselves. To guide them toward relationship with the divine. Tell them about spiritual practice not to gloat over mockers' consequences, but to help them develop their own connection, their own relationship, their own access to dimensions beyond material perception. Fifth, deepen your own faith through this. You witnessed divine judgment manifest. You watched cosmic correction execute. You experienced spiritual consequences arrive exactly as your faith taught they would. Let this deepen your own belief, strengthen your own practices, intensify your own connection. Your faith has been validated not so you can prove superiority over skeptics, but so you can walk more confidently in your own spiritual path, live more fully in your own divine relationship, express more completely your own cosmic connection. Use what you've witnessed as fuel for your own spiritual fire, as confirmation of your own divine relationship, as evidence of your own cosmic connection. Let their judgment become your deepening, their consequences become your strengthening. Their suffering become your motivation to stay close to the divine, to maintain your practices, to honor your faith regardless of whether anyone else believes, regardless of whether anyone else understands, regardless of whether anyone else respects what you know to be true. Let me tell you about the potential for redemption in this situation, because divine judgment isn't primarily about destruction but correction, not mainly about punishment but transformation. Not mostly about vengeance, but awakening. Some of those experiencing judgment will break. They'll become bitter, hardened, more resistant to faith than they were before. They'll blame God for their suffering rather than recognize their offense. They'll curse the divine for their consequences rather than acknowledge their mockery. They'll become more skeptical, more atheistic, more dismissive as defense mechanism against having to admit they were wrong, face their mistake, recognize their error. But others will wake up. They'll recognize what's happening to them as divine judgment. They'll acknowledge their mockery as spiritual offense. They'll understand their consequences as cosmic correction. They'll break in the good way, the transformative way, the way that leads to growth. Their judgment will become their awakening. Their consequences will become their education. Their suffering will become their transformation. They'll develop faith deeper than they would have developed without judgment. connection stronger than they would have formed without consequences, understanding more profound than they would have achieved without suffering. These are the ones worth praying for, worth helping, worth guiding. Not because they deserve it, but because they're ready for it. Not because they've earned it, but because they'll use it. Not because they're perfect, but because they're teachable. Watch for them. Recognize them. Help them. Your faith can guide their awakening. Your prayers can accelerate their transformation. Your spiritual practices can model for them what relationship with the divine actually looks like, beyond mockery, beyond judgment, beyond consequences, into redemption, grace, connection. Now let me speak to something important about the nature of divine judgment itself, because understanding this will bring you peace about what you're witnessing. Divine judgment isn't God being petty or vindictive. It's not the universe being cruel or harsh. It's not cosmic forces being mean or vengeful. Divine judgment is correction, the manifestation of spiritual law, the execution of cosmic principles that maintain order, preserve justice, ensure balance. When someone mocks faith, they're not just being rude to a believer. They're violating spiritual protocol, dismissing cosmic reality, rejecting divine authority. That violation creates imbalance, generates disorder, produces injustice. Divine judgment is the universe's mechanism for restoring balance, re-establishing order, correcting injustice. It's automatic in the same way gravity is automatic, inevitable in the same way consequences are inevitable, certain in the same way spiritual laws are certain. They mocked your faith, thinking their words had no consequences beyond the social and psychological. They didn't understand their mockery was creating spiritual debt, generating cosmic imbalance, producing divine response. They operated in ignorance of spiritual law. But ignorance doesn't exempt from consequences. Not knowing doesn't prevent judgment. Lack of belief doesn't stop cosmic correction. The laws function regardless of knowledge. The principles execute regardless of belief. The judgment manifests regardless of acknowledgement. This understanding should free you from feeling responsible for their judgment. You didn't cause it. Your faith didn't create it. Your prayers didn't invoke it. Their mockery caused it. Their ridicule created it. Their dismissal invoked it. You were simply the target of offense that generated consequences, the recipient of mockery that produced judgment, the subject of ridicule that triggered correction. Divine judgment is between them and the divine. You're witnessing it, experiencing its vindication, learning from its manifestation. But you didn't cause it. They did. So, chosen one, they mocked your faith. But now they're facing divine judgment. Not because you cursed them, but because they violated spiritual law. Not because you prayed for their suffering, but because they generated cosmic consequences. Not because you wanted revenge, but because divine justice is real, automatic, inevitable. Your faith has been vindicated. Your beliefs have been validated. Your spiritual understanding has been confirmed. Walk forward in deeper faith, stronger belief, more profound connection. Walk forward knowing spiritual forces are real, divine authority is present, cosmic laws function. Walk forward confident that your faith wasn't foolishness but wisdom. Your prayers weren't delusion but communication. Your spiritual practices weren't weakness but connection to power beyond human comprehension. They mocked your faith, Now they're facing divine judgment. Let this truth deepen your devotion, strengthen your practices, intensify your relationship with the divine, not out of fear of judgment, but out of gratitude for connection, not from terror of consequences, but from love of relationship, not because punishment motivates, but because divine love attracts, sustains, transforms. Your faith is real, divine judgment proves it, cosmic correction confirms it. Spiritual consequences validate it. Walk in that reality, live in that truth, express that connection. They mocked your faith. Now they're facing divine judgment. And you You're standing in vindication, walking in validation, living in confirmation of everything you believed, everything you practiced, everything you knew to be true. Despite their mockery, despite their ridicule, despite their dismissal. This is your moment. Not to gloat, but to deepen. Not to celebrate their suffering, but to strengthen your faith. Not to prove superiority, but to honor your relationship with the divine that sustained you through their mockery, protected you through their ridicule, validated you through their judgment. They mocked your faith. Now they're facing divine judgment, and you're standing firm, walking forward, living proof that faith is real, prayer is powerful, spiritual practice connects to forces that maintain cosmic justice, preserve divine order, ensure spiritual balance. This is your testimony, this is your truth, this is your vindication. Walk in it fully, completely, confidently. Your faith was never foolish. Divine judgment just proved it.